Hey guys, we are back in Scotty's garage today with the Rustoleum wagon. Last time we were here, we're doing some floor pan repairs, a couple little rust repairs, so we can get the floors in this thing so it can stop being a Flintstones mobile, because it probably hasn't had an intact floor pan for like 20 years. So let's get the floor pan done so we can move on to other areas. In the meantime, I've been doing a little prep work. I've painted in that void section where the two panels overlap under the back seat. I've also cleaned up around the edges and that, so I want to get these floor pans in, weld them in. There's like 100 little plug welds that have to be done, 1.5 meters of stitching that's got to be done right down the center of the floor pan. So a lot of welding today, but we've got a heap of Rustoleum here to help cover it all up when we're done, so we can do sound deadener and seam sealer and all that sort of stuff. So lots of Rustoleum. Let's get it done. Let's get this floor pan finally finished. Right, now after carefully putting our floor pan sections into place, I'm ready to weld them in. What I'm going to do first is do a couple tacks down this middle seam just to put it together. Now I've clamped the front seam where it joins the lip at the bottom of the firewall, and I'll do this back section first. So we'll do the middle seam first, then a couple tacks along the firewall, and then we'll start working our way towards the back and push that down. I'll probably put my body weight on that to hold it down, and then do some tacks on the back side. To start. Well, we have this floor pan section tacked into place. It's not going anywhere. We could sound deadener and seam seal the whole thing right now, call it done, but that's not how I roll. I want to plug weld all of these welds. I want to weld all the way down the center of this tunnel, do it properly. Now, I need to strip back just the paint around these little plug weld holes and down the center of the tunnel, except the local Bunnings is out of stripper discs, so I'm down to flappy discs. I've got to be a little bit more gentle with these because these will actually remove the metal. So let's do some cleanup. Let's get some prep done in here so I can finish off this welding. Get this floor pan done and dusted. Seeing that the floor pan is tacked into place and it's not going anywhere, I'm going to work my way down the tunnel. I'm just going to do little stitches and then eventually join them all together, but a bit here, bit there, bit here, bit there, just to move the heat around. Well, it is cold as hell in the shed at the moment. It is like 10 degrees. I am freezing. Hashtag welding to stay warm. So everything's going pretty well. Got this floor pan tacked in. It's not going anywhere except here where the two pieces of sheet metal haven't quite come together properly. So what I'm going to use is these little sheet metal screws to try and pull them together. I'll whack some plug welds in there, and then I'll go through, undo the screws, and then weld up those holes as well. If this works, I'm a genius. I'm not saying it will work, but confidence is high. Let's see how we go. Oh, that one works. Beautiful. All right, every second hole. Well, what do you know? That worked. That is awesome. Those two pieces of sheet metal have now pulled together tight. I can whack some plug welds in this, get it done. I can actually use the same method along the sides as well because it's got the same problem. But I'm actually really happy with that. So let's do some more welding. Hashtag. It's so fucking cold in here. So here is where we're at. The floor pan is basically done, all right? All the welding is finished. Thank God for that, I tell you. Over 200 plug welds, over 1.5 meters of welding through the center of the tunnel. It has been a massive mission. So I've done some rust converter behind the floor pan under the rear seat because there was some surface rust. We had a wire brush there. I've also covered every bare metal area with the super etch primer. So that is pretty much ready to go to the next step, which is the seam sealer. So we're going to do seam sealer over every edge, every weld. Make sure this thing is totally sealed to the elements, right? No water, no fumes, nothing is getting into this car, I tell you. And then after all that is done, we're going to do sound body deadener underneath the car as well. But that will have to wait till we get back to the Carnage workshop because it's going to be pretty hard to apply here on the floor. So seam sealer inside. Then we'll paint the floor pan. I've got one more rust repair to do over there on the firewall, but we are getting pretty close. Let's move on to the seam sealer, get that done so we can paint this floor pan. Alrighty then, I've got a brush, I've got my tin of seam sealer. Let's crack her open, get to work. Of course, I better give it a stir first. Now that I've given that a good stir, let's start applying it. Like I said, over every weld, over every edge. there we have it. One fairly liberal coat of seam sealer. So I've used most of a whole can. And now we'll just clean up our brush with some thinners in this little mixing jar. But we'll let that dry overnight, then hit it with paint in the morning. So I've let that seam sealer dry overnight, so we're pretty much ready for paint in here, except I want to fix this rust repair section here. It's pretty heavily pitted and there's some holes, so we'll cut that out, get some new metal in there, and then we'll paint in here, and that'll be pretty much us done for the moment inside the car. Move on to the other stuff. Okay, so I've cut out our patch panel, I've cut out our hole. Now you may notice that the patch panel is larger than the hole. And that's because I'm going to use a method that's suggested to me by someone in the YouTube comments section. It was quite interesting. They linked me to a video. I thought it was pretty cool, so I'm going to try it. So I'm going to have to put a series of tacks around that panel, and then I'll cut in at an angle and push, and it will sit flush with the existing panel and fit perfectly. It saves a lot of time, and if all goes well, this should work out really, really awesomely, I'm hoping. This is the first time I've tried it, but we will give it a try. Now this next step is where things get really interesting. Now you're probably all thinking this is going to look shit because he's done the panel behind the other panel and it's going to be this big step. No, there isn't. And I'll show you why. I'm going to cut in at that edge at 45 degrees. Now we'll start at the corner. We'll cut in at 45 degrees and then we'll be able to push this panel back and it will sit flush and it will have the most finest of gaps to fill and should be pretty easy to weld. These are only very thin 1mm cutting discs. Now I'm going to have to modify the method slightly here on the edge because the actual metal moves at a 45, so I have to cut straight in at a 90 along there. And there's also a, like the inner guard sits right behind there, so I'm going to have to come just in from the edge of my patch panel. But this should work alright. I'm hoping anyway. So I'm going to start with this corner, cut through that spot weld and maybe that spot weld at an angle at 45, and then cut straight down through that one at 90, and then push the panel slightly back at the corner, tack weld it flush, and then move across. So you just cut them out sort of 2 tack welds at a time, push it flush, tack, push it flush, tack, and then you'll end up with a smooth panel. In reality, I probably should be doing this from the firewall side because that's the side everyone's going to see, but it's kind of hard to work in there, so I have to do it from out here. So looking down on it from a 45-degree angle, you can see the gap looks quite wide, but when you bring it down, see the gap narrows right up, so it's actually working really well. So we'll push that in, whack a couple of tacks on it, and move on. So in the interest of moving things along, I haven't filmed every cut and every weld, but it has actually turned out okay. We haven't finished it, obviously we've only tacked around it, we haven't done the final welding, but it has turned out pretty good, I think, considering the curves and stuff we've had to deal with. So now I've got to go fully weld it, then we'll grind it flush, might even weld it from the other side, grind it flush on the other side as well, but yeah, it's actually looking not too bad. And I think it's a method we will try again, because if it was on a flat surface, I think it would have come out awesome. So yeah, you learn something every day. So there we have it. The patch is in, fully welded, it's ready to go. Basically on this side of it, because no one's ever going to see it, I'm just going to seam seal it, paint it, it'll be job done. We're going to paint this floor now, and then later on we'll do the other side of that, grind it smooth, make it all pretty, because you know that is the side people will see. But in the meantime, let's paint this floor. Now it is time to paint. And to be honest, we could leave it like this, put underlay, carpet on it, no one would ever know. Most people probably wouldn't even care. But I would know it and I'd care. I'm going to hit it with subframe black just to give the whole thing a nice even coat, just to make me feel better basically. Now if this was an external panel, I would definitely be using the acrylic primer, but for this, like I said, no one's ever going to see it. I'm just going to go straight with the subframe black over the whole thing. Got my little comfort grip here to help the job, because there is a lot of surface area here to spray. So let's get started. Alright, I've already given that a good couple minute shake before I even started, so let's clip our grip on. Grip and rip. Oh wow, this thing works really well. Give it a nice light even coat. Man, I could spray a whole car with this thing. Don't give me ideas. Alright, well what started off as a light coat turned out to be a medium to heavy coat. That's okay. It's got a coat on it and we'll do another couple coats yet. But that'll have to be another day. In the meantime, I am stoked that this thing has a floor pan. It's not going anywhere. It's in for good. So I can't wait to get it up on the hoist in the Carnage workshop so we can continue on with this thing. And I think that's where we'll see it next. So we'll see you next time back in the Carnage workshop.